When I was a kid, we had this pig. Her name was Irma. And no, we didn't raise pigs for meat. How we ended up with her was my dad actually got her as a piglet as a gag gift for my aunt who was visiting. She obviously didn't take the pig home with her. So we had Irma for probably like 8 years or so. And me and my sister would let her in the house, this really giant, probably 300-pound pig, and then my mom would have to coax her out of the house with food. Actually, Irma became like really protective of me and my sister, so much so that she chased the UPS guy a few times. Anyway, Irma just got so big, and I don't know, I guess she kind of became a problem, and obviously she ate a lot of food. And in fact, she even kind of made hunting hard because she would find you and disturb your hunting. And my dad, he was an avid hunter. That finally one day my dad gave her to his friend who had like 10 kids, and she literally just jumped into the back seat of his car. Anyway, she became bacon. So that's the story of Irma, our pet pig. So apparently having farm animals as pets kind of runs in the family. That feeder actually holds like a whole 5-gallon bucket of food, but I actually left it over here in this other house this morning, so I just brought out a pitcher of food to get my bucket, give him something till I fill it up the rest of the way. It is an absolutely gorgeous day today. Definitely feels very spring-like. No, you can't come through here. I noticed our youngest cockerel right there, that the feathers are missing off of his feet, and where they're missing, it's kind of red and irritated. And I'd say whatever chicken has been pecking at the beards of our roosters is probably the one that is doing that, and of course it's probably escalated since it's gotten all red and inflamed. The last thing that I want to do is separate him, because reintegrating him back with the flock at his age is extremely difficult, if not impossible. I'm just going to keep an eye on him for right now and see if it gets worse. Probably will, because that's how things go. And in the meantime, kind of try to figure out what I'm going to do, whether I'm going to do like blue coat or try to come up with some other solution. I wish I knew if it was a single chicken doing it, I would call that chicken, because it just causes a lot of problems that can lead to cannibalism. And Uni's beard was picked so bad that his skin was all red and sometimes even almost even kind of like bleeding, and it just kept continuing to get worse and worse to where I did pull him out of the flock because I was worried about cannibalism. You see these little strange looking like pod things? Those are actually praying mantis egg sacs, I guess you would call it. All the little babies are in there, and once it gets warm enough, this tree will just be swarming with praying mantis babies. And they're really good for your garden because they eat a lot of the pests and things like that. One of the many things that I want to do today is, you see like this spot here where nothing grows. This is where I dump things off the back deck to food scraps and spent beer greens and stuff like that for the chickens to pick through and eat. And I want to basically dig this up and transfer it over to where I'm building my compost pile, where I dump like all the stuff that comes out of the chicken coop and start mixing all this together and build up a nice hot compost pile. At this point, I don't know that I have quite enough nitrogen to put into the compost pile to get it nice and hot, but I can just keep opening it up, adding stuff and flipping it until I feel like I've built it up enough. Obviously this would be quicker and easier if I just got the little Kubota bucket and dug this up, but number one, we don't have access to get the Kubota back here right now. And number two, it isn't really a very thick layer before you start hitting clay. And the last thing I want to do is get a bunch of clay into our compost, because that's the one thing we don't need. This compost pile is a lot smaller than I eventually want it to be, so I'm going to keep adding to it before I'm worried too much about getting it up to temperature. And honestly, I could probably get this up to a nice hot temperature, but because it's so small, it won't maintain that temperature. I'm just going to keep building this up until I get it big enough that I can hold a nice hot temperature. And then I left a gap over here that's kind of next to the fence where I tend to throw the stuff that comes out of the chicken coop, and then I'll turn that into another compost pile and see how many of these I can make this year. I'm gonna go ahead and wet this down, and I'm also gonna go ahead and water my onions again and my peas, because we had a little bit of rain here recently, but it wasn't enough to really like saturate the ground. This afternoon we're going to start tilling up the area where we're going to be planting the potatoes, because I would like to get those in the ground like either sometime this week or next week. All our tilling is done now for our potatoes, and I'll probably go ahead and cut those tomorrow and then give those like 2 or 3 days to like cure. And this might be a little more space than I actually need for my potatoes, but I just told Glenn to go ahead and do it a little wider than I thought I needed it, just in case. The next thing we're gonna do is do another pass of lime on this garden.